Last Night's Pass, episode 31. I'm your host, Coach Steve Mosier, and we have a pretty interesting episode today, right in the middle of the Stanley Cup Finals, but it's also a lot of time is leading up to trades coming before the draft, also a lot of draft talk coming through. So, as you know, in my last episode, I spoke with Steve Ives, a good friend of mine, a good prospect and draft writer, about his top 32. It was a little longer of an episode than usual, which is fine. I don't expect everyone to go through the whole thing, but I definitely would recommend you kind of dig through it a little bit, just because there's some good nuggets in there that have been out in the media on some of these prospects. So the one thing that happened while we were constructing that episode and released it last Sunday, just before the finals started, was the draft combine. The kids that stood out in the combine, because the rankings, there's a lot of rankings, whether it's aerobic, whether it's anaerobic, whether it's strength of right arm, strength of left arm. It's pretty intense, but also understandable. That's how they can see if these players have been preparing for their life in professional hockey. Also, is there an injury that seems to flare up with them? Because these players in all sports at all levels is their investments for the price we pay for tickets, for the price that's paid to the players nowadays. So they are definitely there's a bit of equity in there. So I do want to say, through the rankings, there are a lot of names out of the list that Steve provided to us on HF boards that really kind of stood out. Number 20 on his list, Cole Boudouin, he came out as got a lot of the strength things very high on a lot of that. EJ Emery, number 16, came out of, he actually was interviewed about how he loved football and some of those strength sports. So he came out a lot, huge jump. The kid has ups for sure. And then finally, number 3, Caden Lindstrom, his name showed up a lot in the rankings, in the top 5. All 3 of these guys were in, the top 5 of all players ranked. So more than a few times. So that's why I called them out. One interesting part about the combine is the interviews and teams. They asked some really weird questions. The Colorado Avalanche had prospects play board games in their interviews. The new team in Utah, because we can't call it whatever we want to call it, I guess hockey club, which kind of hurts my back to talk about, asked prospects to share their Uber and Snapchat ratings, which I thought was interesting. And these kids, I hope they realize this stuff doesn't matter at all. It's just to throw them a bit. Nashville was asking players if they would be a pilot, sniper, or a medic in the Army. It's an interesting way to throw off a player, to throw off anyone you're actually asking questions to just completely sidetrack them. These tactics, they seem weird, but not only can they get them past interruptions on the ice, whether it's someone in the stands, doing the crazy things that Happy Gilmore had happen to him on the golf course, or, the old stories of people throwing keys at Mike Mulberry at MSG, but also off the ice, and knowing how to deal with the press and deal with when you go to the grocery store and someone notices what you do. So those little sidetracked moments, I think, are pretty cool. So that was pretty great for all of us that are hockey fans to kind of keep track of. We're in the finals. I'm recording this after Game 3. We're going to post this episode before Game 4. and I want to talk about some things to think about. And it's a little upsetting. Some of them are upsetting. Some of them are kind of, interesting. But also, some of them are things that I've mentioned in the past that friends, other hockey players I know were like, nah, Steve, that's not true. But, here we are. Leading into the finals, everyone wanted the McDavid-led Oilers to win. I understand that. Yes, I understand it's been a long time since a Canadian team has won a cup, and I know that it hurts Canada's soul to think that the team that's the furthest south is going to win one. I'm sure that happened, though, with the Lightning as well, even though I'm not sure the geography of Dallas and Tampa. But anyway, we know, the Panthers are in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale region in the area, so they're pretty far south, and it's very warm there and beautiful and sunny and all that good stuff. So the one thing I want to explain, though, is that the season starts. Every season since McDavid was drafted, the Oilers are always kind of a favorite. It wasn't maybe the first couple of years, but in the last 3 or 4 years, the Oilers are always the one to look for in the West. And I don't think that's fair to the other teams in the West, just because the best player in the world is on that one team. Gretzky was on the Oilers and the Kings, and both teams were great, but there had to be a lot of other people involved to make those things happen. So I think that those people and the way things are set up needs to be addressed. I think people got to realize that these super elite athletes are human, as was shown in the early part of the season. I'm not saying any of this because my pick was the Panthers in 5 games, because listen, I picked the Panthers in 5 games because I feel like the Panthers are a better team and they're gonna make it fast, which I'm not really off, am I? So, but I want hockey to go 7 games. If I'm wrong, I don't care if it means I get to watch hockey until June 24th. I got no problem with that. I love the sport. So, from the start into their big run, I said you can't win a cup without strong D and goaltending. You can't do it. I don't care who wants to prove me wrong. You can't win a cup without D and strong goaltending. Tell me one team that is on the cup, engraved on the cup, that hasn't had a good D and good goaltending. They don't exist. So I was proven wrong against the Stars because luck, not skill, not anything on paper. Luck in the back end of the Oilers helped them get past the Stars. Mediocre D. Don't get me wrong, Evan Bouchard has proven that throughout the year that he has really up-leveled himself, but Darnell Nurse now is playing under 7 minutes a game, and I think it was the third goal in Game 3 where he just got buckled and got beat. And this is not the time of the season to all of a sudden have a lapse in your abilities. The Oilers have mediocre D and mediocre goaltending. And Ken Holland, as I always kind of point my finger at, if he doesn't do something about it after the Panthers finish this series winning the cup, I don't care if it's in Game 7, Game 4, or Game 5 or 6, because the Panthers are going to win. You gotta, you gotta like do something about the D and the goaltending. You got Ekholm. He's a great player. He's a great addition, but you need another person to add to that. And you got to get rid of loosen up some of the fat, as they say. And also, I understand the offense of the Oilers are facing a goalie on a mission. That is, looking like a Conn Smythe is already in his locker. Like he's already got his name on it. Bobrovsky, Bob, man, he is really running through. And if anyone says that he's not they're out of their minds. But I do want to say something about Bob and the decor of the Panthers in front of him. They're allowing him to take chances and make highlight reel saves. You have to understand, that's why the Lightning were so good for the years that they were in the final. It wasn't because Vasilevsky is a great goaltender. He is. He's a Vezina level goaltender, one of the best in the league. But when you have 6 guys in front of you that aren't going to allow the second, the third, the fourth, not all these extra shots, you can only stop so many. I don't care how good you are. And Bob has that in front of him, and his decor led by Forsling and Ekblad are really stepping it up. They're playing it as a defensive unit. They're locking down super elite athletes. They're leaving them on the exterior. There is nothing happening. They're tying guys up in front of them. They're snagging rebounds, and they're making very good outlet passes. So, yes, even if the Oilers are out shooting the Panthers, they're not in their zone very long. Think about that through the first 3 games. This episode will release just before Game 4, as I mentioned, and I really don't want to see a sweep. I'd like the Oilers just to kind of, part of me has two factions in here. I want the Oilers to show me something. I want to see McDavid score or do something McDavid big. I want to see, even though he has been, because I think he has 20 shot attempts and 14 or something shots on goal, just with no goal. Drysdale all of a sudden got quiet. Hyman's been locked up in front of the net, and hasn't been able to do the things that he's done in the season and the other parts of the playoffs. So, that's why I said 5 games. Plus, I think it would be pretty cool for the Panthers to win their first Stanley Cup in front of their fans in their home. So I get that. This week, happy, surprising, not surprising, and pretty unusual. Happy. There's some ones in here that are going to be interesting for everyone, I think. Valtteri Filppula has been honored with the Warrior Career Excellence Award at the 8th Annual European Hockey Awards. Jágr has won this award before. A few other guys that have been pretty legendary European players. But this season saw the 40-year-old win. By the way, if you look at Valtteri Filppula, absolute man rocket. I can't believe he's 40 years old. He looks like he's 25. But he won the Champions Hockey League, becoming the first triple gold club member to do so. He is the triple gold member because he has won a cup with Detroit, an Olympic gold, and a World Championship gold with his home team Finland. I mean, what a great finish for the Finn. Congrats, Valtteri. We miss you in Detroit, but so great that you've had such a great career, and what a way to finish it. Natalie Spooner took home some hardware, winning the PWHL MVP and Forward of the Year, while the Toronto team also Coach of the Year for Troy Ryan and Best Goaltender Kristen Campbell. It's unfortunate that they got upset by a really strong Minnesota team who ended up winning the Walter Cup. So, congrats to Natalie Spooner and those. I wish I could just say Toronto name, but no, it's just the Toronto team. Stupid. Congrats to Sarah Fillier on getting picked number 1 by the New York team in the PWHL. As a player for Princeton, I'm sure that she's happy to stay in the New York, New Jersey area, since she's kind of already been rooted here the last 4 years because of school, where I believe she majored in psychology. Sarah has been a massive scorer for Princeton and Team Canada, and we're excited in New York here to get an over a point per game player, and let's try to get the New York team in the playoffs next year. So welcome, Sarah. Congratulations to all these great hockey players that were drafted in the PWHL for this year. bravo, and congrats on this second year that we're approaching. Congrats to the Florida Everblades on their third, count them, 3 straight Kelly Cup championships in the ECHL. This team knows what to do in the Cup Series, winning in 4 or 5 games in their 3 years winning. So that's basically, I believe, out of the 3 game, for 3 years, this was the first year they lost in the championship. I believe the first 2 years they swept. So that's pretty wild. The Florida Everblades have a huge following, a huge fanship, and they beat a really hard team to beat in the KC Mavericks, who broke every regular season record possible in the ECHL. So, congrats on Florida, and hopefully next year, KC will be able to be there again to dig through it. Surprising. IIHF Hall of Famer Natalie Darwitz was fired as the GM of Minnesota team days after winning the Walter Cup. Darwitz is born and raised in Minnesota, played for the University of Minnesota, captained Team USA, won 3 World Championship medals, 2 Olympic silvers, 1 Olympic bronze. She was hired as PWHL Minnesota's general manager in September of 2023. The team won the Walter Cup on May 29th, and on June 8th, the league said the feedback to us was pretty direct and pretty clear that there wasn't a path forward with the current personnel in place. I hate when they say personnel. You're not talking about multiple here. You're talking about one person. The current person is the wrong person. It's just so I don't know, so soft. Seems like there was a real problem between Darwin's and the head coach Ken Klee. Ken Klee ended up actually handling the draft picks for the PWHL draft. This one is so spicy, it's crazy. There's so much wild news all over the place on Twitter, in multiple news reports. There will be more that I get to say to this because it's pretty wild. I've never heard of a GM being fired after you win a championship. And I've also never heard a GM being fired because of the coach. Usually, the chain of command is a little different than that. Not surprising. I watched it just before I recorded this. The Hershey Bears win an OT over the Cleveland Monsters for a rematch against the Coachella Valley Firebirds in the Calder Cup. The two teams met last year in 7 games, with the storied Bears getting their 12th Calder Cup win. Keep an eye on the series since it will be Dan Blausma's last run with Coachella before he moves on to coach the Kraken next season. I watched game 1 where Coachella won, I believe, 4-2. And, I'm rooting for Coachella because Dan Blausma seems like he's a good American boy, a good American boy. He's a good coach. Let's see how he does. And I'm curious, too, considering I was talking about the KC Mavericks, who are the ECHL Kraken affiliate. I'm kind of curious, since KC had such a great year, I wonder if any of the coaches from KC move up to AHL. Maybe everyone kind of gets to step up a bit. So keep an eye on that. It's airing on an NHL network, which means if you don't have a cable box, you're probably going to have to steal it or something somehow to watch it, because it's such a pain in the butt to get NHL Network. Unusual. Kyle Okposo is one of the veteran names that gets forgotten of who hasn't won a cup. In the last weeks, we talked about our boys with the Stars, all the veterans on the Stars, including Captain America and Jamie Benn and all those guys that haven't won cups. But this is interesting. Okposo's on the Panthers now. He's played enough to engrave his name on the cup, whether they scratch him or not. But if he wins, he has a $500,000 bonus on his contract. Not a bad gift for winning the Stanley Cup. Not bad for a kid from St. Paul that just has never won on a playoff team. He's never been on a playoff team because he spent most of his time. He was drafted by the Islanders. Spent a lot of years with the Sabres. I think Islanders and Sabres fans, I live in New York State as well. I think you should cheer this guy on. I think you guys should be cheering for the Panthers for this moment because he deserves it. He's been nothing but a great pro. He has had really heavy injuries in his career. He's had some mental health injuries that he's had to deal with in his career. And man, a guy at 36 who's got 1,000 games on his belt would be great. It'd be great to see him lift the cup. So, but I said it's unusual because that's a pretty interesting bonus to add to your contract. The hockey coach who was the designer thoughts. This week is interesting. So the Kings and the Ducks changed their logos, and it's literally not worth talking about because nothing's new. So we'll move on. Utah showed their jerseys and color schemes. I like the color scheme, but the jersey looks like they were given the usual template that the PWHL uses and created in 30 minutes. Bravo on this terrible amount of zero effort put into a jersey, a brand in a league that is the best in the world. By bravo, I'm being a bit of a smartass. I love how they name the color scheme as well. This is also funny, and I'm being funny ironically. It's called Rock Black and Salt White and Mountain Blue. I get it because black, white, and baby blue sounds stupid because it is. So I don't mind the color scheme though. It's not so bad. It's too bad the team doesn't have an actual name, which is stupid and dumb and crazy. I really hope that this young owner will come up with a solution that's better than the Utah Hockey Club because HC should not be used in hockey ever. Not once, not at all, not ever. That is for soccer. Soccer uses FC. That's their thing. Let them have it. Lastly, this year will be the last for the Minnesota Wild's color scheme of forest green, red, and gold. And instead, they're going back to a retro color scheme like the old North Stars. It's fine. Whatever sells jerseys, I guess. Coach's Corner this week. This one kind of hit the heartstrings. Brought me to tears when I read it. I wanted to give my condolences to Roman Zurianov, an 18-year-old who played in the torpedo system in Russia. It's reported that he committed suicide by throwing himself in front of a train. This comes not even after a month after 14-year-old Ivan Bezhanov was found dead doing the same thing. The reason I'm talking about this is because we are in this time of young athletes being put through with the draft and everything. We're putting them through incredible, intense pressure. Steve mentioned last week, and I loved his comment about how he loves this kind of magic moment when a kid gets drafted and how happy that moment is. But man, there's a lot of stress that leads up to that. There's a lot of stress that leads up to being included on prospect lists. And these kids are not going about it very well, and somehow it's slipping through the cracks for us. It's incredibly sad to hear someone with such a bright future thinking that that's the only way out. My fellow coaches, don't always be a drill sergeant. I know we all do it. We all push it, especially in these sports that are contact based, that are aggression based. Sometimes we are a lifeline to these young people that they might not have at home or amongst their peers. Don't just ask, "Hey, you okay?" or "How you doing?" Don't just ask that, because all they're going to say is, "I'm okay," or "I'm good." Because we still do that as adults too. Ask them, "How are you feeling?" Take them aside. Show them you care. Try to get to the root of the problem. Hearing this news about Roman and Ivan made me very upset. And there are also places outside that can help. Some people can help off the field. There is a suicide and crisis lifeline that you can call or text with the number 988. I'll say that again, 988. And you can call or text whoever needs this. If you don't feel like you want to talk about it, text. These people are there to help. So if you're feeling like you're running out of answers, if you're feeling like you're running out of options, please approach it with this number and try to reach out to somebody, please. Today's interview, our guest today was one of those players that really kind of slid under the radar in the 80s and 90s when super elite players like Gretzky, Lemieux, Yzerman, LaFontaine, and so many others were the ones being talked about. And he was right there. He was even there, and he was deserved to be on the '87 Canada Cup team. It wasn't just a fluke, which I think a lot of media likes to say. A lot of people like to troll about it. He made it because Mike Keenan needed him. I don't like using the term journeyman either to explain a player that played for multiple teams in his career. It's an easy term, but I do like to think it's about a player that fits a team that needed him to fit their needs. And he did that for a lot of teams. And he had a pretty storied career from it. Doug Crossman, the conversation I have with him is so great. He was an offensive D man before that term became a catchphrase in our hockey terminology with guys like Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes now. He was on such a legendary squad in the 80s with the Flyers. It was kind of the Broad Street Bullies version 2, and was also a witness as a teammate to some of the greatest players and moments throughout his 914 games played in the NHL. This conversation was another great perspective of a time in hockey that really experienced an evolution from the old school hockey of the 70s and early 80s to the most advanced players from not only in Canada and the US, but from around the world. Once the gates started opening, and players from Russia, and other countries like Sweden and Finland and so many others started making their way to the NHL. Note on this conversation, there is some echo moments. I apologize for that. I was having a hard time fixing that. So if you're listening in your car, don't swerve off the lane if there's a little echo there. It's not intentional. Apologies for that. I think it's time that we take a step and listen for yourself. All right. We've got a defenseman born in Peterborough, drafted by the Chicago Blackhawks, 112th overall in 79. Played 914 games in the NHL with the Blackhawks, the Flyers, the Kings, the Islanders, the Whalers, the Wings, the Lightning, and the Blues. He also played in the OHL with the Ottawa 67s, AHL with the New Brunswick Hawks and New Haven Nighthawks. Baltimore Bandits is where you ended your career. But you also played in the IHL with Peoria, Denver, Chicago. Made the storied 1987 Canada Cup Canada team that beat Russia 6-5 twice in 3 games in a 3-game series. And they actually game 3 was won 6-4 by the Russians. Welcome to Cross Ice Pass, Doug Crossman.
Well, it's great to be here, Steve. I didn't realize how well traveled I was. Very well traveled. I should have been a pilot there. I should have got my pilot's license, back in the day. But it's great to be here. Looking back, it seems like another person. The way you described it. But looking forward to the chat. It just brings back good memories.
Yeah. I think if your career was maybe in the 90s or in the 2000s, you might have lots of airline miles in that case.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Yeah. A lot of free miles. I'd be traveling the world back in the day. Yeah.
Well, Doug, I like to always start with my first question that I start with anybody I interview is what is your fondest hockey memory? And it can be an old one, a new one, a recent one, whatever you can think off the top of your head.
Yeah, there's always more than one. I mean, the one that just jumps at you first is an historic goal. I happened to be watching on the bench when Wayne Gretzky in the Canada Cup, and he passes it to Marilyn Lemieux in that wrist shot, and it's just unbelievably magic. You don't expect, first of all, two six-star players playing together. That's very, very unusual, like a dream team. It's very unusual to have those generational type players in the game at the same time, and then they click on that goal. That's definitely the electricity that ran through there. But there was a lot of great moments in Philadelphia, with the runs at the Stanley Cup. And one other thing, I think that one I did remember too is when you're a rookie and you're climbing those stairs in old Chicago Stadium. And I'll tell you, that's pretty equal to the Wayne Gretzky goal with electricity. You're coming up the stairs and you're like 19, 20 years old, and you're following Tony Esposito, and you're going, and you come up in there, and the rink is so tight, so acoustic, and I thought, and then we're playing, I believe it was the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm going, I thought it was in the Roman Coliseum, and I said, well, it's been a good life. I know I'm not going to make it out here alive, but it's going to be. It was well worth the stepping up those 20 steps, into that rink. So that's very memorable.
Those are wonderful memories. Those are wonderful memories. I mean, the thing that's great about them all is, that of course, I've never been I never been in the NHL, but the idea of, you're having your first game, walking into the arena on your first day and kind of having that experience is just magical. And we all know it's a very low percentage that gets to have that. So I'm glad you mentioned that to us. I'd really like to, I'm kind of chronological the way I ask questions a bit. Sure. There are moments I kind of jump around a bit, but I really like to have the listeners kind of get into, your hockey life a bit. And I'd really like to know, how your youth career was in Peterborough. And then I also heard on an interview with you and Brad Marsh that you grew up in London as well, right?
Yes, I spent my whole life in London. I haven't been born in Peterborough, but I think I left when I was around. I didn't drive the car there, but I was 1 year old, and we had to go over to London, Ontario, and that's where I grew up. But yes, my dad, and even Brad's dad, back in the day, they were totally involved in hockey. There'd be about 6 or 7 fathers there all the time, and some of it was outdoor rinks, believe it or not. But Brad was a couple years older than me, and I never got a chance to play with him that leap year, but I knew who Brad was, and he didn't last very long in minor hockey. He was a big, strong guy at 14, and I believe he went right into junior B. Him and a guy by the name of Rob Ramage, big, strong guys, and they were playing against 18 and 19-year-olds back in the day, and he was out of minor hockey very quick. But I always knew, and I played with his brother. So we were from the same Southwest London minor hockey, and along with Craig McTavish, who played with Brad Marsh. They were both 2 years older than me, and we lived within like a triangle with 2 miles from each other. And it was really funny, how we grew up together, and I did some training with Craig. Craig went to college, and and I played junior B with Craig, so we would train in the summer together, and we became really tight, and we're always for each other. We're from the same hometown, and it was funny how we ended up as defense partners. Brad, back in the day, you take a different route, and you ended up as defense partners.
Well, when you say Brad Marsh and McTavish, it was surprising. In that case, it's surprising to see you wore a helmet most of your career.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's a great question. I mean, I think I got a record there. I think I played with probably, I'm going to throw it out there, but I think I played with 5 of the last 6 guys that didn't have to put the helmet on. So I played with, or I grew up with him. So I didn't play with Craig, and then Brad didn't wear a helmet. And then I played with Dougie Wilson, and Dougie didn't put the darn helmet on. And Ron Duguay played with Ronnie, and I'm not sure who's left. I didn't play with Randy Carlisle. I think he was one of them too. But I'm going, I don't know what was in the drinking water there in London, but there's two guys there, man. And I said, Brad, man, this game, man, and he didn't put it on, he's a tough man. So,
Especially, it'd be different if it around your era was when the guys started raising pucks, but that happened way before you. Like Bobby Hull was ripping them, was ripping high crossbar for a while before. I can't even imagine not wearing a helmet.
Oh man, it's when that curved stick came up and that powerful shot. Like I talked to his son Brett, and Brett got some tips obviously from the Golden Jet. They're two great scorers and tremendous hard and quick releases, eh? And he told me that his dad used to shoot it. I believe, don't quote me on any of these stories, but I think I got it 90% right. But he'd shoot it hard on the ice. And, he'd shoot it hard over the shoulders at their head or something to scare them. And then the next one was on the ice or 6 inches, it'd be a goal, because they'd be looking for that big shot coming off his stick 4 feet, 5 feet in the air. So I wish he told me that story. I might have had more goals back in the day, but,
I actually got to interview Bart, the youngest Bobby Holes of the Holes, and he mentioned that before they started actually having the gun on the to measure the shot distance and speeds, because I got to interview Ali Afraidy as well about that. But apparently Bobby had the Guinness Book world record for hardest shot.
It could be, yeah, definitely. Like it's unreal, really, to be honest with you. It takes me back to Chicago Stadium. Like I could spend an hour in Chicago Stadium, the 3 years I was there. And I didn't find out till later. Like I'll get around to that shot story. I found out later. I don't know. Don't quote me again, but I couldn't believe you're standing on the blue line in that big organ and it's going through you, right? And the stands are shaking. And I'm going, are the Lions coming out, and they're just going to we'll wrestle around for a while and it's over. And it's so loud. And I couldn't believe it. And then years later, maybe 10 years ago, I found out that the organ was built into the cement halfway around the rink or something. And I think they tried to save it, put it in the other rink. That's a story I heard, but that made sense. I'm going, I guess they have a big game. Yeah. And I said, man, that explains everything. But anyway, there was one time, I could actually hear slap shots go by me. Like Reed Larson took a shot one time. And Al Frady had a hard shot too, but maybe I could hear the puck go by. I'm going, geez, I haven't heard a puck before. So then you imagine the Golden Jet going down there. There must you not only hear it, your hair's probably parting on the side, on the way by. But definitely, I can believe that.
Going back to your youth, I'm curious. Because I've heard that Bobby Orr was kind of your hero. Was Bobby Orr being around when you were at the right age and the ripe, perfect young age to be able to see Bobby Orr? Was that really the integral to you deciding to play defense?
Well, yeah. I mean, he was. It just seems that I think Bobby was born in '48. I was born in 1960, and that when you're 12, and you're impressionable. That's your hero, and he was a hero to everybody. He was he was the Elvis of hockey. He changed the whole DNA, and he just had that charisma, man. Everybody couldn't wait for him to get the puck on his stick, and it's a gift, eh? It's a gift, and he changed the whole DNA of the game, and up and down, all over, had the puck the whole game, and nobody ever saw that before. And the DNA changed from then on, and then I had to deal with a fellow by the name of Wayne Gretzky changing the DNA from the red line in. He's standing right beside me at the red line. I never saw a forward do that before. And I said, "Oh my Lord," and he's behind the net, and on the side, we never saw that before. So, and then Mario too did it with his great one-on-one skill. And I said, man. But I always tell all my buddies, you know, I just said, well, I even told Wayne when I played with him, I said, I taught Wayne everything he ever knew. And then I'd say, yeah, to make defensemen look dumb, you know, so he learned that. I was a good mannequin for him to, you know, learn how to go around defense.
That's I'm sure that's not the best, but probably the best for you to have that, you know, have those kind of practices where you got Wayne Gretzky flying by you. You know, you had Tim Kerr flying by you. You got to play with Brett Hull. You got to have the Canada Cup with Lemieux. That's a pretty impressive practice squad.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Their abilities are really, and you can learn from it too. You know the gifted players, and you know they can do things other guys can't do. You know, and you're just hoping that, you know, you have to really watch them. And it's tough playing against Edmonton. We did a good job going 7 games in '87 and 5, I believe, in '85. But you know, they're one of the best teams to ever play, and you know, we can hang our hat on that. It was a great effort. Ronnie Hextall, you know, he won the most valuable player on the losing team, which is kind of rare, and it shows you the effort, how great he played in a losing effort. But you know, we were winners in a lot. You know, that was an unbelievably generational team in history. You know, and a lot of people say, you know, if Edmonton didn't exist at the time, we might have won one. You know, but you had an unbelievable dynasty there, and they, you know, you couldn't take any time off on the ice. Every second, you know, their movement and everything. They could put the puck in the net in a second. It would be Curry or Wayne or Mark Messier, you know, Craig Simpson or Tikkanen or Paul Coffey. You know, he really. We all grew up playing against each other in junior, and Paul. I mean, out of everybody, he came closest to Bobby Orr, and I'm sure Paul's got to tell you he must have idolized Bobby too, because he played a heck of a lot like him, you know.
Yeah. You know, I mean, as you know, back in those days, there wasn't a lot of offensive defensemen, but you were very offensively gifted. And I imagine having, you know, watching Bobby Orr and, you know, even in your last year playing juniors in Ottawa, you had 116 points in 66 games, which is pretty impressive under Brian Kilrea. And I'm wondering, you know, not only where did this kind of like offensive minded defenseman come from for your career?
I think a lot of it was just going back to Bobby Orr. Like he spawned everybody. Like, you know, everybody wanted to be Elvis, right? And that's what happened. I think Paul would tell you, Ray Bourque, everybody, Dougie Wilson, go on and on. Paul Al McGinnis, everybody that put on a pair of skates and wanted to rush the puck. It all goes back to him, and that was definitely the inspiration. I could see it in the other players. They were, you know, it's like I believe Kobe Bryant and all those stars. They're looking at Michael Jordan, right? Michael's looking at Magic, you know, Larry Bird, and it's handed down kind of that way. And then they try to add something to it, you know, and you'll see that, you know, and it's good. It's great homage. You're looking at somebody that can play like that. It's just they're just so gifted, you know. It's rare, you know.
Yeah, no, it's you when you started with Chicago. We've heard about your kind of fondest memory walking into Chicago Stadium and some of the different things they were trying to save to the next Chicago arena. But how was those 3 years really playing in the Hawks system?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed everywhere I've played. They're different. Getting back to junior, Brian Kilrea would let us. We were copying Edmonton. You know what I mean? The wide open teams. So your points are going to go higher, you know, because you're, you know. And then Peterborough was with Mike Keenan and Gary Green. They were locked down more, you know, as far as system goes, defensively strong. So their point totals wouldn't be, Larry Murphy was there, great defenseman, another puck carrying, great talented player. And, he probably could have had 200 points, but playing in Peterborough, he had 100, or whatever. So it's in the same. So what happened in Chicago was Odell Tessay was really best friends with Brian Kilroy, and he coached Cornwall, and they played the same way. So he let us play there in Chicago for the year, and he put a great line together with Dennis Savard, Al Secord, and Steve Larmer. It's, a sniper, sure shooter like that, and then a playmaking scorer and a power forward, tough as nails that can score like a Timmy Kerr. And then you got Dougie Wilson with a 120-mile-an-hour slap shot. So we had some good power plays, and and Philadelphia. So you come to Philly, and Philly's just a little more defensive. Mike came in from Peterborough, and that has its advantages too. 2 Stanley Cups visits. And, there's always pluses and, adjustments wherever you go. And that's part of being a, pro player. You have to adjust to the coach on a certain, how he wants to play, so to speak. It's just almost always like the Lakers. Lakers are run and gun, and the Celtics were more positional. You can almost see it, right? And it's a great study to learn both ways to play, Makes for a good matchup, like a boxing match.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce that it's Smooth Sack Summer, and it's upon us, officially. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're groomed from pubes to bum, thanks to our friends at MANSCAPED. You can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off your order and free shipping when you go to manscapes.com and use code THPN. I repeat, code THPN. Summertime and trimming is easy. What are you waiting for? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Hurry! Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. There's, the Flyers time seems like it was kind of like in the heart of your career. It's funny, being a kid from Detroit, my dad was a fan of the Broad Street Bullies, as a lot of people were outside of Philly. And in 83, 84, you got to play still with, Bobby Clark, who became the GM, Bill Barber, McLeish, Holmgren. Barber and Holmgren become the assistant coaches. What was it like as a young guy seeing that transition from that first year of you being a Flyer to, the more younger Keenan years that you were there?
Yeah, there was, it's interesting how you bring that up. I guess as I get older, you're thinking about it and you're getting great questions and they really kind of think and put it together. I was actually in 2 transitions. I was in Chicago when the WHA folded and all the players came in, and then there was Stan McKee who was out there with a training camp with Tony, who near the twilight of his career, and then the WHA folded, so it was a transition. And then when I went to Philadelphia, I was fortunate enough to play with some of the Broad Street Bullies at the twilight, the last year of their careers, and watch Bobby. I played with Bobby and Paul Holmgren and, like you said, Ricky and Billy. And you could tell, how they won Stanley Cups, and they were hurting. And that was a transitional year because right after that, it was like Chicago. They went upstairs. They had to retire, and they had some huge injuries they were playing through from all those years of war. And to watch that and to still go out and play is an inspiration. But then when Bobby went to the GM spot, it was a whole transition to the youth movement. In came Pete Zutzel, Rick Tocchet, Derek Smith, the Sutter brothers, Scott Mellenby. It was just kind of like Chicago, and when you think of it. And then that's the team that we ended up being in 2 Stanley Cups with that Bobby designed, helped build. And but to watch them icing all the time, they had to ice to play, all shoulder there and everything, and they'd still go out. And they were numb. They weren't in pain. They didn't play like they had any pain. But then after it was over, the ice packs would come out, and it's just like when I got older, I knew, I'm in the twilight of my career, man. This body hurt, that type of thing. But they were
well, the veterans get the table, right?
Yeah,
and the ice bath.
Oh yeah, and they used to watch them when you were kids. I remember watching them when they won the Stanley Cups. Then I realized how you get to see how they won Stanley Cups. You can see that.
We've mentioned Brad Marsh, and basically the 4 defensemen on the Flyers were you and Brad Marsh were a pair, Mark Howe and Brad McCrimmon, and you guys were very hard to play against from all the video I've been watching and things. I mean, what made those 2 pairs so special? The years you guys were so successful.
Well, we had a good complement there. I had to get the puck up, and Brad he blocked, he did all the everything pretty much, and it would make my job easier. You have a big, strong guy that's fearless to the point where I never in my life saw a guy, I even tell him to this day, how he could time a slap shot with no helmet, and he would throw his body in front of it. And I don't understand how he didn't get hit in the head all the time. I would have got hit in the head every damn time that went down. And I don't know how he timed it like that. And at times, I think he got nailed pretty good, but I don't know how he did it. He's been doing it from a young kid, and then I always joked with him. I thought he was Glenn Hall in net, flopping around like a goalie when Pelly was out or something. Then he became a goalie with no helmet, and he stopped a lot of goals there, throwing his body there. And I was kind of dancing around trying to get, where the puck was, and then he'd be blocking for me, and I could move it out, So, and the same thing with Brad and Mark. Brad, Mark had the puck all the time, moving it, and then Brad would make it easier for him, as well as he could play too. Brad could move the puck too, so it was a great compliment. And I think the biggest thing is we were allowed to play together for a long period of time to have a lot of chemistry with each other.
Yeah, and from what I hear, you guys got lots of minutes.
Yeah, we did, and we loved that. Then you brought in, Shel Samuelson and J.J. Gagnon came in. Daryl Stanley was top. Eddie Hospodar. There was a lot of guys that were right there too, and they really did their part too, and we all did. We had a lot of parts were in place. I look at it as a baseball team. You had your leadoff batters, your home running hitters, your relief pitchers. We had all those parts at that time, and unfortunately, we went into another team that had all those parts, and a very historic team, and a fellow by the name of Wayne Gretzky didn't help. But yeah.
Well, Doug, I really kind of want to focus on 86, 87. I know you guys got to the Stanley Cup in 85 as well, but the one thing about 87, it's such an interesting year because, under Iron Mike, and the best part was the conference final, and that, you guys upset the Habs, and that Game 6 warm-up. Talk my listeners through that warm up, because I never heard. I actually didn't hear about it until our buddy mentioned it to me, and I'm like, and I looked it up, and I'm like, holy friggin'
Yeah.
crap!
Yeah. Oh, I know. I had the same reaction all the time. Like, who is that idiot out on the ice there? And I forever the flip flop man. Doesn't matter. Like, you could play 900 plus games, but that doesn't matter. You're just. I joke with it. I think it's funny because that's all you know. You're the guy with flip flops. But no, what it was everybody's got an idiosyncrasy in hockey, right? And, everybody goes through their rituals on the ice in there. So what happens is I always take all my equipment off because I want to adjust it, because it loosens up when you're starting to sweat and warm up. And Brownie would take off half his stuff and sing with Yoka, they'd loosen their skates. But I was the only guy that took all of it off, and then we'd all, head into the washroom, right? And then all of a sudden, I think it was Chief Berube who wasn't dressed in like Stuthers, big strong guys coming in. Everybody's like screaming, going like this, and we're going, what? And then all of a sudden, within a second, the whole Montreal dressing room's empty, and there's just us three guys. And I'm going, what the heck? And so you'll notice in the film, I think Brownie came out first, and then Ilka, Brownie came out, but he didn't even put his shirt on, He tried the skates, walked out. Ilka took a little longer, and I'm scrambling around. I'm the only guy in the room, and I'm starting to panic. I'm not out there. Where's, you don't want to, are you hiding? And I didn't know what to do. So if I was thinking properly, I would have grabbed my skates, put it down to the bench, put them on, but you're not thinking. You're just thinking. You're the only guy in the room, and you're hearing all this noise. So I ran out. I said, so they used to issue us these shower, they didn't want guys to get, sick from the dirty floor, right? They gave us these slippers, and I said, geez. I said, well, I can't put on my dress shoes. These are less slippery, So I go out there like that, and that's what the rest is history. I just said, that's the story. At least I was there looking stupid, but you're still with your team, And one last thing, I always thought I was lucky too, because I said, man, what a YouTube that way. As if it wasn't bad enough. Looking that, just imagine you get sucker punched, or somebody hits over your toes, and your career is over. Well, that would have been a worse YouTube thing in history right there. So I got off pretty lucky.
Yeah, and the fact that, just to give some more context, as a player, as a coach myself, I can't imagine a team, and apparently this was a Montreal Forum thing they did. I didn't know. I mean, I never heard of it. The fact that they would shoot in the opponent's net at the end of warm up is crazy to me. I would have lost it as well.
Yeah.
I would have been out there in flip flops, no problem.
Yeah, the story comes out later. It's pieced together over decades, actually. Like, I talked to Eddie. Eddie's a friend of mine. We played Eddie Hospital. It was Eddie and Chico Retch, And they didn't want Lemieux to put it in our net. That was his idiosyncrasy. There's only 4 people on the ice. Everybody's on, and nobody knows it. So they're going to do that, apparently. And then I talk to Eddie all the time, and we're just talking about a week ago. And we do a lot of alumni stuff around Philly and stuff. And we said, geez, Cross, we've known each other since 1977. And we started doing our math. Geez, 48, 50 years, 10 years. And he still tells me inside stuff about it. I said, well, you're the guy that started it, Eddie, and I'm the one that came up with the So, and we started back with the Ottawa 57s, man. We've had a great career. Just
yeah, and the fact of that game, the fact that no refs were out there. I remember in the film I watched, Bill Barber's like yelling at the Montreal bench, and then on top of it, that was a massive game for you guys to win. The Habs had won the Stanley Cup the year before. The year before that, you guys had lost to Edmonton in the final. So it really was it was kind of a moment of boiling moment where it was just like, wow, that warm up happened. You guys had this great game against the Habs where you won, and then you got to move on and play the Oilers again. yeah, it's so wild to me that you know,
Yeah,
that you got to be able to do that in those 3 years.
yeah, it was a special team. There was a lot of character there, and I was just privileged to be part of it. And yeah, it was an unusual series with Montreal. It was kind of packed before the game started. Like they're taunting you, the whole, how the bowl is just like the Rangers. The Flyers come in and the bowl's already sold out in warm up. And they're yelling and stuff. So it was already charged. And I guess Eddie took it upon himself with Chico. They weren't gonna get yelled at like that. So the drama started when everybody's in the dressing room. We joke about it to this day, and then there's a bunch of big boys out there. Chris Nyland and Don Cordy, and tons of guys. And Chris and Chief Berube wasn't even dressed. I don't think he had guys, that weren't dressed that night. But there was it gets a little scary when there's no referees out there. For some of the, you're in there fighting. And
yeah,
I'm watching in my flip flops.
Well, and that Stanley Cup final, the series won 7 games, but there is a noted moment in Game 6 where you guys kind of narrowly win 3-2, but in a lot of Flyers media, they call it the loudest moment in arena history. They actually title it the night the Spectrum shook.
Yes.
Do you remember that moment?
Yes, we talked about it with some fans, and I was going to bring that up. I talked to the fans, and I say, Philly is the second loudest stadium I've ever been in history, and the only reason is, Chicago Stadium was cheap. Like if the Spectrum had an organ built, halfway around the building, it would have been right there. And so they're a close second with no organ in the cement. So unbelievable. It goes right through your body. The electricity and J.J. Daniels' goal. Historic. And yeah, that's something you'll never forget either. And I wish we brought it home back to Edmonton. And didn't quite, turn it over there, but it would have been nice to bring that back,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing is you guys got so many great moments from those times with you and the Flyers, including you mentioned the Suitors. I wanted to mention, I actually have on here about talking about the Suitors, which is interesting because they, half the NHL played with one of the Suitors, but because there were so many of them in the 80s. But you got to play with Daryl in Chicago. You played with Ron with the Flyers. You played with Brent in the Isles. You fought Dwayne and Rich. You had a strong connection with the Suter family.
That's another one of my records, I think, that I'm very proud of. It's I broke in with Daryl. That's part of being well-traveled. But you're right. I just started thinking about the guys without the helmets, and now the Sutter brothers for sure. It could be a record. Richie and Ronnie I played with, Brent, Daryl. That's 4. I didn't play against Brian. I played against Brian and Dwayne. So 4 of the 6, I believe. But they were, what a family. I mean,
yeah. And the fights you had with Dwayne and Rich are pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, well, they were. I wasn't a fighter per se. You got to, protect yourself, obviously. But yeah, they're competitive. Like some guys, there's some guys on the ice that actually leave their body when their eyes are spinning, and they, like this, and that's what happens on the ice too. So your face, but your body, it's just it's a competition at the moment, and you don't know, And there's there's a story there too. I used to sit beside the goaltenders all the time. I had the low number, so I sat beside Ronnie Hextall. Ronnie, great guy. And I'd sit there and I'd watch him kind of turn in. Everybody said, great guy, but boy, he gets those skates on. They said, and I used to watch him change. It's like, Dr. Jekyll's and Mr. Hyde or whatever that story is. When he goes out, when he gets that equipment and he goes on the rink, it's not Ron Hextall in his suit. And that made him a great goaltender. He got into that out of body experience, I guess you would say, to become that great goalie. And he just let him do his thing. And boy, he was mean in there. Boy, nobody's coming near that crease. I'll tell you that.
Well, and it really, you know, I always, the Broad Street Bullies from the 70s into the early 80s. But then I think about how those guys that were the Broad Street Bullies started to kind of construct the next generation of the Broad Street Bullies. And you guys were very hard to play against. Rick Tockett was really big and tough,
Yep.
and you're humble about it, but you seem to hold your own in a fight.
Well,
And then, of course, Ronnie Hextall, and then I interviewed Ken Reggett, and he was I even joked with him. Ken Reggett's the kindest person I've ever met, and he's like, he bumped Claude Lemieux once, and he goes, "Oh, he just kind of bumped me," and I'm like, "You hit him," and he goes, "Yep, that's a Philly thing."
Yeah. Oh yeah, I appreciate that, but I'd be like wrestling just to we had some really tough guys, and it's a tough profession to take up when you have to, I'm looking at power plays and moving the puck, and they're studying like how guys fight, because they're bread and butter. They're very a tough breed of person, and you got nothing but respect for guys like Davey Brown and Darryl Stanley. Ricky Tockett played, on the top two lines, but they'd have to go out and stick up for everybody. Eddie Hospodar, Craig Berube. There's character there, man, and there's a lot of, and unfortunately, a lot of guys are hurting like that. Took up that profession, which hopefully, it's really it's a tough thing what they had to go through, and you're seeing the after effects of some of it. And I hope we can discover some things to take that away. But I'm telling you, that toughness is rare, and it's in the NHL. When you make the NHL doing that, I'm very happy about it. They protected a lot of. I had 2 concussions. I could have had 50 if there wasn't guys on that team like that. Trust me. And Brad Marsh, tough, and making sure you don't get run. It's the only sport that you come to a complete stop at 20-something miles an hour, and it's wood. The other sports you can dive into the crowd, a little bit, or run across the TV camera. Football's tough too, but man, it's a little dangerous in hockey at times and then you got those blades on the bottom, those knives, and then those sticks and pucks flying around. So I was lucky in the long run, but some guys, boy, they were on the front line all the time.
Yeah. Before I kind of run into the second half of your career, there is something I'm very curious about when it comes to this '87 Canada Cup team, and the fact that it was you probably made the, from what I've read about everything, is that the thing that really helped you on the team was that your coach for the Flyers was the coach for the Canada Cup team, and because there's all this talk about why did Scott Stevens not end up there at that point and everything like that, but you played really well, and to be able to play with the group that you got to play with, and not only just Lemieux and Gretzky, but that whole team was amazing.
Yeah.
And how was that experience and that big win?
Well, definitely, I was very fortunate. I think there was 5 or 6 of us in training camp. I think we're kind of rewarded a little bit because we went to Stanley Cups twice in 3 years. I think they were looking maybe to that you played at a higher level. And some of the guys like Scott Rion, I think he came in the next Canada Cup or something. But yeah, everybody could have made it. I mean, Cam Neely and Wendell Clark, and you could have had 3 teams there. Really, I don't know how they came up with the final thing. And we were definitely rewarded for going to 2 Stanley Cups, playing in high pressure situation. Maybe could have been part of it. We were used to it. It wasn't like when you're going through 2 Stanley Cups with Edmonton, there's a lot of, to make a Stanley Cup in itself is tough, and then you played in 2 of them. So maybe there was a little bit of that. But, you don't know in the end. And anybody could have, any one of those guys could have played. I was just lucky. I was with like Larry Murphy and Paul Coffey. We came out of junior together, the three of us, and it was kind of like a reunited a little bit in a way. I never got to know them till then. And, they're funny guys too. It was funny. It was great how funny they are. You get to know them off the ice, And there's a lot of really good stories that I'll, cherish for that, just in that, as well as with the Flyers, we all get back together all the time. Brad runs the alumni and very active and do a lot to the community. And it's always like, your brothers in arms forever, and all the stories back in the day.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And the thing that I find really interesting about your career was, those two great cup runs with the Flyers, of course, but then later in your career, talk about connected, Doug.
Yeah.
Like, this is so big. I mean, not only you got to play with Gretzky in his first year as a King, you got to see the Red Wings dynasty grow with your old Flyers teammates Brad Marsh and Brad McCrimmon in Detroit. Yeah. I found a great highlight of a Sergei Fedorov pass to you and you got a goal on. You played in the inaugural season with the Lightning, which you had that historic 6-point game. What was it like being a part of those kind of historic moments at that time in hockey?
Well, looking back at it, you're younger and it's just great. Like I you're well traveled. There was some off ice contract stuff, and good, bad, or ugly. You make a decision, so to speak. But I ended up. It's how I ended up there is just kind of funny. Like how you end up, in life. Looking back, Wayne. I played against Wayne and Junior and stuff, and knew him before that, and got to know him. And, thank gosh he was on my team this time. The first time he's on my team. Because you get a little bit of a break. And he was instrumental when I ended up in LA. And then you remember all that, and then you come in, and then Tony calls me, hey, you're coming to Tony Esposito, my first goalie that I sat beside. You're coming to Tampa, and Cross. He's calling me in the summer. I'm out on the beach. Him and his brother are starting the organization there, and I just started laughing, because Tony was really, I grew up watching him. Like I used to joke with, I had his Esposito brothers had the decals on those shirts that he used to sell and all that, and and he was a funny guy too. Like Tony, just old school. And so that's the type of thing. It's the human side, how you ended up there. Looking back, it was a great life experience, and I was just happy to meet a lot of great people and play with against a lot of great players.
Yeah, and I always tell people outside of this podcast, hockey players are the best guys to have for friends, and you got to. For so many years, you had so many different long, big rosters and so many great, I'm sure, stories and friends from all of that, for sure.
Oh, yeah. It makes you think of all the stories, too. So, I actually do got I do got a film treatment. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's, just reminded me, there's some movies here. You know what I mean? And, really, like, we call it a dramomedy. It's true, and it's a redemption story, but it's funny too, and it's like true, funny, and I joke with, the powers that be. I say, that's not based on one guy. Oh no, it's an amalgamation of 30 guys and one guy, but that's the secret. We're not going to tell you who it is, because there's some really great characters in hockey, man, I'm telling you. That's part of the richness of it too, but there's a lot. There's definitely some movies and books there, because there's some funny stuff, but some good stuff,
Yeah, kind of near the end of your career, looking at your stats outside, of course, the big 6-point game with the Lightning. Your best statistical year was 89 and 90 with the Islanders. Then in 90, 91, you played for 3 teams. Really curious about that year because you started with the Islanders, then you went to Hartford, then you went to Detroit, where you were reunited again with 2 old teammates of yours from the Flyers. 90s kind of started with a bang for you.
Yeah.
How was those? How were the later years?
Well, part of it was my bad decision. Like I love the Islanders, and I didn't sign. You know, I should have. I look back on it, I should have. But you're sitting there, you're thinking, geez, you know, you're 29, you're 30, you know, you're the age and stock, and when you get that age, they're looking at you like you're 55. Man, now you're, you know, in the regular workforce, you're 55, or they work till you're 65. You know, so I should have signed, but I didn't, and then that's what led to a little bit of bouncing around the contract there. But I think Brian Murray liked us, so I used to coach against Brad and myself and Brad McCrimmon and Marshy. You know, I like to think that we beat up on Washington most of that time. You know, and so I think Brian liked us coaching in Detroit. So he ended up with Forbes. I think Howie ended up there, right? So it was. Yeah, I think they liked the old Flyer, you know, thing there at the time. But they were rebuilding too. They ended up being a great dynasty too there. Their own right shortly after Steve, Sergey, and everybody. But yeah, it was.
Yeah. Thank you as a Red Wings fan. Thank you for being the veteran presence.
Yeah, anything I can do, you know, the young ones were. But yeah, it was all good. It's nice to see the young ones come in, and then, you know, to see what makes the other guys you played against that now play against Proby and Joey Kosher, you know, that you're playing with them. You know, you're learning all the time. You know, there's always an underpinning of respect for the whole league. You know, it's a tough job, but it's a tough career, so to speak. But we love to do it, and you know, there's no complaining here. You know, I learned the hard way when you're young. You know, and you're rooting, and you're on the farm helping out back at when you're younger. You're going, geez, that's actually really tough. You know, but it's all good, and it's great memories.
Yeah, and Doug, I knew we were going to have a lot to talk about when it came to your NHL career, when your moment with Team Canada. But I wanted to mention, kind of near the end, I wanted to talk to you about, you know, the last few years you were kind of in and out of some teams in the AHL and the IHL as well as the NHL. But there was one year you got to win a Turner Cup with the Denver Grizzlies. So there was a, you know, and, you know, when you look through your career and the times you tried to get to the Stanley Cup and moments you were really on strong teams, you did get to have a championship year. Talk to us about how the Denver Grizzlies year was.
Well, it was great. Butch called me in the summer and he said, you know, how would you like to be a player coach type of thing? I said, well, geez, that's a nice tag, you know. See, I would like to coach and everything, and you know, I learned a lot there. I didn't do too much coaching, you know, but I mean, it was great to Kevin Shoveldian was the actual, and we had a great team too. It was almost like, you know, Butch let us play like the Islanders, which is a little bit like, you know, like wide open. You know, they were moving the puck, and I think that's why my point totals were a little higher. You know, Chicago, they let you be a little less defensive, and then the Islanders at 29, same thing, and that, geez, I guess 34, you kind of, it's an Islander farm team, so to speak. So, and Butch was in charge of it. Geez, we just really, you know, kind of went through the league pretty good. They really stacked the team, so to speak, because obviously they were looking to put an NHL team there. You know what I mean? Because it was a big market, and we were drawing really well. And so the next year, that's when the Avalanche or Leafs came down. But I always joke about a real story there. it's a funny story. I don't know which is listening or not, but like, it's like, I was the older guy. We had Andy Brickley, we had Norm Rochford from Team, we had a lot of patron word to need, so it was kind of fun. But I remember I was officially the assistant coach at Tartar, right, like playing coach. And the one time I actually tried to say something, oh, Dougie, Butch is going, okay, Dougie, because we were like 8-8. What's going on? Oh, so, because there's pressure to win, right? I'm going, this is going to be funny, but with that, so I'm going, geez, Butch, he brought us in, he brought us into meetings because we were like, I want to say 500. We were, we got a winner here, the money and this team. And so I went into the meeting and I said, what? You want to know? You want to, you want to really know, right? I'm the assistant coach, right? He goes, yeah, tell me, Dougie. And there's Kevin Young. He's only 25. Right? And I go, well, Butch, because he was a workhorse there. We were on twice a day. We never had a break for a month, right? Went to them and it's thin air, it's thin air up there. You're sucking wind in the mile high, right? And we're doing off weights. We're doing lifted weights and running, doing 2 a days. We're going like a full practice the day of the game, man. So I go, what Shay? You might need like a day off or something. Okay, Dougie, we'll do it your way, but you better win. You're like stuck your neck out. And I said, well, okay. And then after he started giving us optionals and some days off there, so we kind of, we're just we actually did pretty good the rest of the way through. So Butch would joke around that, Dougie's not going for the pregame skate, are you, Dougie? So we joke back and forth. No, Butch, I think I'll sit here and read the paper here tonight, But it was funny that way because the young guys were kicking in too. There's a lot more. The young guys were kicking in. They were becoming great players for promotion and stuff. And everything really, really, really hit up and so, I think Butch, we went straight to the Toronto Cup,
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great that. Yeah.
That wasn't the only reason. That's just what I remember.
One thing I'm curious, Doug, the one thing that I found a lot about your career, but I'm super curious about when you were done playing. What have you been up to since then?
Well, just the biggest thing is my kids. I just enjoy coaching and being a father. I think there's a crossroads there where so I have a few opportunities to stay in the game, but you started when you were 4 years old, and you're 34, 35, and then your daughter's, you do the math here, you're 5 and your son's like 2, and you said you don't want to be traveling. And then I just said, decision was to be a family guy. And I really enjoyed it. And, and it's like, that's like 30 years of hockey, really, when you first start. And so I enjoyed doing that. And my son played, and my daughter played 1 year. She was a tennis player, a swimmer, and Derek played a lot of sports. So that's basically what I'm proud of in my second and third act, That's about it,
Well, Doug, this has been such a great conversation, and kind of being able it's so funny because looking through your career, you hear guys here and there and in history of hockey, and and I'm such a big fan of it, and the fact that you've been kind of at the behind the curtain, even though you were part of so many legendary moments and you had such a storied career. And thank you for sharing all these stories you gave us of this career that you've had.
Well, I appreciate the compliments. You've been very gracious. I mean, I don't look at, myself as kind of that, I had a solid career, but I'm not, and, I guess guys are better, there's guys that are better out in the front, more here that way. I was always kind of great to be the assist man, so to speak, pass the puck and assist man. And that's where I kind of found my niche, but I never looked at myself other than that, there's so many great players way above my level. And those are the guys that I enjoyed playing with. I kind of judged my career on, who I played with and the games I was in, and the drama of, to get there and behind in the aftermath, and all of that. It's all human drama right up to this day, because you're bonded forever and all the guys. And, so it's been, like I said, interviews like this, Steve, is great because, it gets the cobwebs out of the brain and you start thinking even more deeper than you already are. And I'm in my third act of a Shakespeare play, Good, Bad, Ugly, and some of the stuff I look back, you're making me look at the good stuff, but when we look at the bad stuff there, I got to keep on running.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you don't think about the bad stuff.
Yeah. Or the not so good
especially because
stuff.
there's so much good stuff. Yeah. But yeah. No. Again, Doug, thanks so much, and we'd love having you on.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Wow. Hearing Doug talk about his career and the players he played with and the experience that he had was really special. Whether it was his moment in shower slides fighting the Habs before Game 6, or his fondest story of, I really love his fondest story of walking up the stairs at the old Chicago arena for his first game in the NHL. It's almost a poetic moment. I can visualize it, and I'm sure many of you can too, because it's something all of us young hockey players dreamt of, was that moment you get to, to walk into the show. So, but I do want to mention thank you, Doug, for your conversation. Thank you, Doug, for your time. And I hope everyone enjoys it. Doug was introduced to me. I want to mention this because I didn't mention this with Josh. But Doug was introduced to me by Bo Leslie, who I ran into after he was having his Northern Roots Pond Hockey Charity here in New York City. He knows a lot of people in the NHL. This event gets a lot of really legendary names, veterans from the NHL, guys that played in college, people that have played kind of all over the world playing this. So it's pretty great. But it's the event is to help his wife's foundation called I Rise Above. The foundation helps women with resources to rise above breast cancer, and they do so much for such a great cause. I suggest going to iriseabovefoundation.org to learn more. I'll also leave a link below. They do accept donations on the site, so I hope you can be intrigued. I hope you can learn. The site is pretty robust. So I think thank you, Bo, for giving me Doug. So that's the end of the episode 31. We're going to see what happens in Game 4. Hopefully the Oilers can win one in front of their fans. I really hope for the Edmonton gets to have a little taste of a Stanley Cup win. It's been very long for them. Well, don't forget, subscribe or comment below. Check if you can't listen to on YouTube. I'm on Apple and Spotify as well. I have Fondest Hockey Memory t-shirts and koozies. If you're interested, DM me. I will definitely send them to you. And that's about it. See you on the wing for that crisp cross-ice pass, tape to tape, perfect aim, setting you up to score. See you soon. We'll see you in episode 32.